Well, Betsy, the topic should be Trump is winning too much. I can't handle it. Every day that I read Truth News headlines, there are so many upsets to the far left. And the Democrats are throwing Hillary under the bus. Donna Brazile comes out and lies. Ed Klein comes out and says he's been lying. Everything Mueller does shows who Mueller is. It's the Trump effect. Cha-ching. Attack Trump, it comes back on you. That's what a really good defense is supposed to be. You don't even need to use your energy. You let them use their energy against them. So we see it happening everywhere. I can't even enumerate all of them. The other day we did one where we just went on and on and on. Too much winning.
Well, I think something that needs to be won is the American people need to have social media in its hands and get it out of the hands of these thugs.
Who likes Zuckerberg right now? Raise your hand.
I'm telling you, they totally trash him because we see right through him.
He is trash.
I mean, really? He's the guy that's supposed to...
He's going to be the president. Betsy, would you please get a hold of yourself? He's going to be the president. Why? Because he's going to use Facebook.
Well, the interesting thing that I've heard from some of the people reacting to the videos is that, oh, you're not going to take my Facebook away, are you? And I said, I'm not even discussing the subject of the future of Facebook. That's for them to decide whether they're going to be good or bad.
That's worse than an atomic war, a nuclear war.
We're here with Michael McKibben, and Michael, you have a win-win scenario for people that they get to keep their Facebook. We get it out of the hands of the CIA and all those spying intelligence agencies.
Monopolies.
And how does that work?
Well, we have just filed a Miller Act notice with the president, President Trump. And the Miller Act is basically a lien on a claim with the federal government. And in our case, we have now learned over the years of research that the federal government is the one who stole our technology and gave it to everyone. So gave it to everybody in all the agencies and gave it to the entire tech world. And so there's never been a situation like this that I'm aware of where something, an important invention like this has been stolen by the very government that was supposed to protect it. So essentially, everybody's had 17 years of free use of social media. We're not talking just Facebook. And so the question is, how are my shareholders going to get paid for all this use of our product and our money to benefit everybody in the way everybody's benefited? And so we have filed a Miller Act notice, and we've said, okay, most of the people that use Facebook or the other social medias don't realize they're infringing our patents or in our trade secrets, and they depend on them now. So we've been trying to figure out a way so we're not threatening their benefits that they have come to enjoy. But by the same token, I'm not sure fair-minded people would have a problem in taking care of us because we've never been paid. And so we've come up with a solution where we're asking President Trump to start paying us $2 a month per user for all their apps. And the average person uses about 30 apps a day. So we're saying pay us $2 a month for everyone in the country and all the agencies and everybody else around the planet that you've given it to. So that's, 8 billion people? $2 a month. Pay leaders, shareholders that for what's gone on, and pay something for the history, and then pay something going forward. And in addition to that, government, you can charge whatever you want as a surcharge on use of social technology, since it was never open source. And that's the big interesting thing I'm hearing now as people talk about Bitcoin and the other social media. Where did this come from? Who created it? And it's interesting, however, nobody wants to answer the question. We're out there saying, folks, we created it. It was never magic. It was never some mystery guy sitting in some island out in the South Pacific. It was a group of engineers in Columbus, Ohio, who raised, now it's total $20 million, and spent 3 years inventing this thing. And yet, because the bottomless pit federal government decided to steal it, they also used that money to try to suppress knowledge of what happened. And so what we're saying is just acknowledge that, and in the process of paying that $2, we'll give everybody a license for their use of the technology on an ongoing basis.
Now, this is amazing. What what you're saying, Michael, here is that you do know who invented the Bitcoin technology. Is that that's what you're saying?
From everything I can tell, we did.
And you did. Isn't
Right.
that amazing? Can you
So it's
just-
not magical. It's not magical. They just repurposed the profile technology and the way the data is stored, and gave the mechanism different names, but it's basically a profile in a social network that's got a number associated with a Bitcoin instead of a person.
That's amazing, because just like the social media that's used now for evil, Bitcoin and the technology there could be used for
Yes.
evil, but we could also, as citizens, make change.
Well, most people don't realize that in the early days of Facebook, they actually floated the idea of Facebook money.
Yep.
And Bitcoin didn't come till later, when people pushed back on the idea of allowing Facebook to create money. And so they just morphed the name. But it's basically a profile with an unlimited data store. So, and then now they call it blockchain. Well, that's just another way of calling it storage of metadata associated with a transaction.
Yeah, that was part of Facebook to begin with. They wanted this crypto coin
Right.
online.
Right.
Well, what people don't understand is that IBM Eclipse Foundation started taking your stuff through one of the top patent lawyers in the country, who'd been on the National Security Council and many, many high-level positions, written executive orders,
Can
written
I interrupt you
laws.
on that? Because
Yes.
somebody asked me to go into more detail on that. They
Oh.
want to know, how did he get the source code? And I can explain that very easily. He was our patent attorney. Patent attorneys have to see your invention in order to help you write your patents. So he was very familiar with our patent, our designs, and all that. He didn't actually have a copy of the actual source code. And source code is nothing more than the longhand version of your invention, written out, typed out by programmers. And so the question was asked, well, how did he actually get your source code? And I can answer that very simply. When he didn't have it through 2001 and into 2002, he had lots of ideas about it, but he didn't have the actual code. He actually cooked up a contract opportunity for us with Lawrence Livermore National Labs, run by the Department of Energy and University of California, Berkeley, out in California. And it was called a Smart Camera Project. And so they wanted to test the use of our platform with all of the smart cameras that they use to secure the perimeter of Lawrence Livermore Labs, which is one of our preeminent nuclear labs. I mean, Teller was still working there at the time. And so the idea was these smart cameras would only pick up video when there was an event occurring in front of the camera, and then it would send it back to our database, a profile, for storage and review. And so he created what's called a CRADA, a Cooperative Research and Development Agreement, with Livermore Labs and the University of California, Berkeley. And we got a copy of the camera, an actual camera, and proved within about 8 weeks that the whole system worked fine. So the government then signed off on it and approved it. And from that point on, we had the approval to use our system with Department of Development, or Department of Energy and Department of Defense encryption. So once we got that, we created a license so that we could use that technology and commercialize it. So Chandler wrote this agreement, which was 65 pages. And buried in the 65 pages, and I think Appendix C, was this requirement that in order for there not to be any confusion in the future about who had what and who owned what and whatever, that Leader would put a full copy of its source code in custody with an attorney of their choice, and that was in this agreement. So at the moment that agreement was signed, we gave Chandler, he was our pick because he was our attorney, a copy of the source code to put in his vault in Washington, D.C.
What year was that?
That was in 2002. That was in June 6th of 2002.
But you still didn't have all the bugs worked out.
We did not have all the bugs worked out, exactly.
And you already had copyrights.
He had already filed copyrights. Now we know what that was all about. That was all so he could feed that are screen designs to the cartel, basically everybody in the Eclipse Foundation. I mean, it's really interesting today when you look at Google or Facebook or any of the others. Those designs are as close as you could possibly imagine to the designs we filed for copyrights on.
And you had a big chunk of this by like 1998 done, but then it was like totally finished by 2003. Is that right?
1999 was the magic aha. The programming really occurred in earnest 2000, 2001, 2002. We thought we were done. He got a copy of the code through the Livermore Labs agreement.
And then every partner in Eclipse Foundation had insider
Well, hang on,
wealth,
let me tell you
and
how
then became
Eclipse got it.
huge.
11 weeks later, Eclipse issues a new version of their source code, which was 8 times larger than its previous versions of its source code, and it had included dozens of modules of our design in the new version. Well, then Chandler found out that we didn't think it was done, and we needed to do more programming because of the scalability issue that we'd run into. And so therefore, they then had to stall through 2002, through 2003, till we got done at the end of 2003. So that's in that interim times when Zuckerberg started stalling all the introductions of Facebook at Harvard.
But Google, Gmail, YouTube, Instagram, Palantir, and a half a dozen others all waited. And the minute
Yes.
that they got that
Yes.
stolen from you, they exploded.
Yeah.
That's my point.
Well,
and they knew
everybody
ahead of
will
time.
remember wikis and all those programs came out after the IBM Eclipse Foundation conference on February 2nd to the 5th of 2004, called EclipseCon in San Francisco. Well, February 4th of 2004, during the conference, is when Facebook went live.
And then they say, because it was an Eclipse Foundation, 40 million given by IBM, and it was a protected foundation. Then they gave it out as source code. But as you
Right.
have said again and again, they have lost the original source code. But now they actually refer to as the source.
They lost their knowledge of who provided it. That was it. It was very cleverly worded.
Very nice.
That we just can't. Gosh, guys, we can't find it.
Well, that's why they got smart with Bitcoin and made this imaginary character
Exactly.
who developed it.
Well,
They
I mean,
took the world.
and now they're even associating Reid Hoffman and Peter Thiel with Bitcoin. Well, these guys were all standing there with their hands out, waiting at the Eclipse Foundation for the code to come out.
Exactly.
Sounds
And then
like-
became
And
billionaires.
Mark Andreessen, by the way.
Became billionaires through practically monopolies in these areas, because then they had infinite money to do what Peter Thiel says, which is only a stupid person allows competition. You buy your competition, and he says the only business plan you can have is a monopoly, period. Anyone else is a fool. I just heard him say this.
Well, I mean, I don't know if that's Freudian or foolish or what, but obviously they're getting cocky.
Well, look at Jeff Bezos. Look at these people. They are monopolies. This is Standard Oil. This is AT&T. People don't understand.
Right.
When you talk about the internet, you were talking about AT&T. They put the lines in. And who paid for who? What were they at that point? A monopoly allowed by the United States government that was so subsidized by them that you can say half of all those lines were paid for by taxpayers, but AT&T gets all the profit, okay? Still to this day, they get billion-dollar contracts to provide broadband out into rural areas where no one even lives. Why? Why do they get paid to put in cell towers with broadband, microwave broadband G4? Why?
5G. I mean, it's the 5G.
5G, when 5G happens, it will be completely pervasive. We live in a complete continuum of electromagnetic frequencies, microwave frequencies. We've been bombarded at all times. Who benefits from this? There is no such thing as net neutrality. That is complete insanity.
Right.
There is net allow the tech lords to be a monopoly. That is
Right.
what's going
Well,
on.
the whole net neutrality wording is classical of this group of attorneys. And the way they write all this stuff is they write something at the beginning of their document, which sounds reasonable to a normal person. You're not supposed to lie to Congress. You're supposed to tell the truth in court. All those kind of things. Well, with net neutrality, it sounds good. Sounds like, well, we're into neutrality. Mm-hmm. And so what they say is, everybody's going to have equal access, and everybody goes, that's good, so they don't keep reading. But what they if they kept reading, they would see it says, but anybody that's not a carrier is exempt from these rules. So Twitter and Google and Facebook, they can all censor till the cows come home because they're not a carrier.
And because they are a private corporation that has human rights in this country until they go bankrupt, and then they're not a human and they don't have any more rights, and they're not even responsible for the debts that they created. But these corporations use that so that they literally do have a right, and we have to remember that. Anyone can refuse to serve anyone in America. That's the bottom line. If you have a company and a store...
Unless you're a Christian baker.
I was gonna
Correct.
say, yes.
Yes.
For a gay man,
Except in
it is
today's politically correct, extremely left, extremely almost socialistic or almost communistic Soviet type thinking that you just described so beautifully.
Well, I mean, the brilliance of what these guys have pulled off. I mean, you have to give it to them. This is a brilliant plan that they have.
Oh yeah, it's brilliant. It's clever as all get out.
Let's just stop here and explain what is that brilliant plan.
Well, it's evil genius. It's not godly. It's not human centered. It's evil, but it's brilliant. And they have, and part of the reason they get away with it is because no reasonable person believes that this many people would cook this up for such a long period of time and keep at it until they got it right.
That'd be a conspiracy. Are you talking conspiracies?
That's a conspiracy.
I'm getting my tinfoil hat.
Rolled their eyes at you when you try to tell them this story.
Well,
Because
I stopped telling people because it's just too big for most people to take in.
Well, that's why we're doing this little bit by little bit by little bit to try to get people awake to what's happened.
The exact criminals now in Washington are the exact criminal tech cartel that went after your company.
I think that because of Mike's past experience at working in the Soviet Union at the beginning of the decline of the evil empire, and it truly was evil, I saw a whole empire suffering from this kind of evil cabal on a large scale. So the idea of that was not foreign to me. And I'd caught wind of it in the West, but I wasn't focused on it. And I didn't want to believe that Chandler was screwing me. I didn't want to believe that the courts were just going to not pay any attention and not protect our patents. I didn't want to believe all that stuff.
Or that he could set up the courts, that he can actually get people appointed.
Well, that's something that's just become a revelation of late. That my dear Professor Chandler has been advising presidents since before Clinton. And so that means he's been at the center of power advising on the selection of judges at the appeals level and at the district level for, how long has it been now? Since the 1990s, so that's 37 years. So that's most of the judges that are out there.
How about the administrative law judges? Has he had a hand in that?
Oh yeah, at the patent office, I mean, he practically could run that office. And there were many times I would be at his office, and patent examiners would call him to get coaching.
Well, look who was the head of the patent office. Kapos, who was with IBM for how long?
Well, IBM made some calls while I was there as well. So I've seen a lot. I know all this is true. And so the idea, I mean, you see these courts and the way they've leaned left and they don't pay attention to the Constitution anymore. It's brilliant what they've done. They're taking over our country by taking it over through our constitutional means and then bending them to this socialist, communist. It's not really communism as we knew it in the Soviet Union. It's more like Nazism. It's where the corporations remain intact. They just do what the government wants.